recording. Okay. Hey folks. My name is Jessica Mashkevich, and this is One Take with Jess. Today, my guest is Randy Resnick. You may have seen him before because he's been on previous episodes, but today he is Chef Randy Resnick. He is a trained chef that graduated from Johnson & Wales forever ago, so he's been doing this for a long, long time.
For sure.
And I'm a big fan of food, so today we're going to talk about steak.
That sounds really good to me. Even though it's breakfast time, I'm hungry. So.
Steak and eggs for breakfast. No, this is how to make the perfect steak, because I know that I've been screwing it up for years, for a long, long time. So what are some of the things that, I could tell you some of the things that I do wrong. I freeze it, first of all, and then I thaw it, and then I throw it on a barbecue with like some sweet seasoning sauce, and then it burns.
Freezing steak is actually not that bad. The key to freezing steak is freezing it fresh if you are going to freeze it. If you can possibly get in a cryovac package instead of like what you see at the supermarkets, which is the styrofoam tray with the wrapping around it, because that allows some air, and it has then you get crystallization of some of the water that's trapped inside there, and when you defrost it, it might discolor it a little bit. But if you actually could get steak in a cryovac and then freeze it, when you take it out, it won't have a lot of those attributes of freezing the steak. But the key to cooking a steak is starting with a good steak. I mean, you know, when you go to supermarkets today, they have, or the butcher shops have this bright red meat that is, looks very appetizing. But the truth is that you want the fresh red looking steaks, but you also want marbling, which is like fat content inside the steak, which is where the flavor comes from. So
when I go to the supermarket, I'm already confused because I see so many choices and I don't know which one is the one that I should throw on the grill and which is the one I should throw in the crock pot. How do you even tell? What's your best thing to look for on the wrapper? Sirloin?
In a lot of respects, it's the price is usually a dead giveaway. The cheaper the meat, the less tender it is. So when you see things cut into steaks in particular, they're usually $7.99, $9.99, $11.99. Those are a lot of times your grilling steaks. Whereas a chuck steak will be a lot cheaper. You can grill it, but it's not necessarily the best steak. But it's a cheap steak to cook, and it can be good if it has some marbling in it. But for the most part, like at the restaurants, we sell, the premium cuts, which are like from the loin, porterhouse and T-bones, rib steaks, New York strip steaks, skirt steak. I mean, those are the most popular steaks for sure. Okay, so those are the ones that you can definitely take home and throw on the barbecue or in a pan. What's the difference between pan cooking and barbecuing? It's all about time and technique. You could actually cook really well in a pan. Searing them in a pan sears in the flavor, sears in the juices. Where barbecue, you get the flavor from the actual caramelization of the fat dripping on the burners, and that little bit of smoke actually adds to the flavor of the steak as well. So 6 one, half dozen the other. I mean, I don't typically cook my steaks in the house, especially in a hot pan, because it creates a lot of smoke if you're doing it properly. Okay. Now, when you take it out of the refrigerator, say you didn't freeze it, but you refrigerate your steaks, how long should you let it hang out before you start cooking it? Well, like old school will tell you that the steak needs to be room temperature. It doesn't really need to be room temperature, but you need to know how to adjust your cooking times based on the temperature of the steak. So if you like steak like medium rare, you want to get your steak around 130 degrees on the inside. If it starts out really cold, it's a different time cooking it than as if it was, a room temperature steak. Well, we typically will leave our steaks out for anywhere from, 15 to 20 minutes just to take the chill off. Okay, and do you guys prefer the pan? You said the pan smokes, so you prefer the grill to grill steak? Yeah, I mean, you don't really see too much pan type cooking on steaks itself. I mean, there are people that use a cast iron pan to cook steaks. Like if you blacken something, you'll season it with seasoning and then blacken it in the pan, give it that black color, that cherry color, a really super hot pan. They are very smoky. Most people want the flavor of a broiled steak, which is flame directly on the steak itself.
Okay. And when do you season it? Do you season it before? Do you wait until after it's done to season it?
No, I seasoned it before. So we have a couple of different steaks at our restaurant. We have a steak called Dodgen steak, which you know, but Dodgen steak is over 100-year-old recipe. It's a very old school recipe for steak. And that gets a Lowry seasoned salt as a seasoning on the whole filet. And but when we typically do the other steaks, we just use kosher salt.
Just kosher salt, and that brings out all the flavor?
Yeah, and it's not overbearing, and it has a nice flavor to it. And you don't want to over season it because you want people to have that ability to season it at the table if they want it. Some people don't want salt. Some people want salt. We're in the Catskills. We get a lot of that. Exactly.
I was going to ask you if this is insulting to a chef. When you serve a meal and then someone goes and like dresses it up with ketchup and salt, is that insulting? Tossed out of the restaurant?
Ketchup can be a little insulting. Steak sauce is insulting. Well done is insulting. When someone says, "I'll have the filet well done," I'm like, "What? Really? Okay."
You may as well just put your shoe on a plate.
But I've graduated to. I'm all about the money. So like, if you're willing to pay $36 and have a steak cooked well done, good for you.
Yeah, this person is used to it, so they're not expecting anything. No,
and the flavor's in the blood of the meat. Like the more blood in the meat, the more flavor the meat has. So if you overcook a steak, you're cooking all of that blood out of a steak. You're really drying that steak, and they just, to me, you almost have to use a steak sauce or a ketchup or something to make it, true. Just to be able to swallow it.
Just to lubricate it to go down.
Exactly. Right, without needing the Heimlich.
So, oh gosh, two things just popped in my head at the same time. Number one, why is cream spinach so good when it comes to pairing it with steak?
I happen to love cream spinach too. So it is really good. And the funny thing is that we make cream spinach and we use frozen cream spinach because it's just better than fresh.
That's true. It's like salty. It's got like a whole,
It's chopped. It has the right consistency. You squeeze the water out of it, you make cream spinach out of it. When we use fresh spinach and we saute it with some garlic or whatever, and then we add cream, and then we add cheese, it just never tastes as good for some reason. I don't know why.
And this show is all for regular people. This isn't, I'm not trying to get anyone to become their own chef and cook straight from, like the fresh down to the whatever. This is grab what you can and make it absolutely delicious. And you have a chef right here telling you what's actually very convenient and extremely delicious.
For me, I'm a 7-day-a-week worker guy, but when I go home, I love to grill on the grill. And for me, that's the easiest kind of cooking there is. In the wintertime, I actually position my grill right outside my back door so I don't have to step into the snow. And I can grill all winter long, just flip open the top and it's right at your door.
Yeah, and there's a fire extinguisher right next to it.
No, you just kick it into the snow. You just kick the whole thing back into the snow if there's an issue. So, but it's one of definitely the way we cook pretty much 12 months a year, because you can cook veggies really easily, some olive oil, some salt, we do onions, we do peppers, we do asparagus, we do steak, we do chicken, we do pork chops. It's just a really fast, and you can cook everything on one grill. You don't really have any pots or pans to clean, which is nice. And you cook it's a fast way to eat. In 15 minutes you're eating dinner. So
that's great for people that can definitely have a grill. If not, if you have an apartment, then you may be using your pan, which is fine also, because I guess the key would be, to do some olive oil and to make sure that it doesn't hit your smoke point where all of a sudden the oil is ruined and then now you have a big smoky mess. So, but talk to me about aging, and is aging really something that people should look for? I know that that's important when you go to a steakhouse, but less important when you're at the grocery store.
I'm personally not big on aged meat. I feel like aged meat is drier. It has a funny flavor to it. So there's two types of aging. There's wet aging and there's dry aging. Dry aging is very old school. You buy the entire loin. You put it in a special box, a refrigerated box that uses gravity coils where the cold air falls. It doesn't get blown around with a fan inside the room. And over time, the meat gets tenderized because it's drying, but also it's being protected because on the outside, like a mold starts to grow on it. And then the whole thing starts to tenderize. Naturally, the enzymes of the meat tenderize all of the meat that's on the bone or however, whatever it is that you're cooking. And then you trim all of that and then you cut your steaks. And to me, that has a funny flavor. I mean, there are people that absolutely love it, but it has a funny flavor. And then wet aging is where, so today when beef comes in, it's not like the old days where people used to break down halves of cows. You get a half a cow and you break it all down. Today what comes in, it's called boxed beef. So if you're buying a short loin, which is T-bones in porterhouses, that short loin comes in a bag already in its own blood. And wet aging is actually where you age it in that bag. And you could go 30 days in that bag, 40 days in that bag, and that will also tenderize it. But to me, it doesn't get that funky flavor that you get with dry aged meat.
Okay, and that's not spoiling, like just leaving it in that bag and like
technically, yeah, both of them are spoiling it, right? I mean,
and this is something that people pay a lot more money for spoiling meat.
Well, it costs more money too, because if you take the meat, it costs you $10 a pound, then you age it, it loses weight over that period of time, and then you trim it. Okay. Which, so your cost per pound of finished product is much more expensive than just taking it out of the bag, cutting it, and selling it. So there is a premium that you have to pay for that. You're not paying necessarily for the steak. You're paying for the steak and everything that got thrown away.
Yeah.
For you to eat that steak.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. I never knew that stuff. So if you marinate meat, let's say you put it in a baggie and you want to marinate it to bring some flavor into it before you cook it. First of all, is that something that actually works? And second of all, should you do a dry rub, a wet rub, and should it have any sweetness in it or no sweetness in it when it's raw marinating?
I'm not, again, me personally, I don't really marinate steaks. I think steaks, if they're good, they should only be salted and cooked. But there are tougher types of steak that you probably do need to marinate. And it is good because the flavor will penetrate the meat, especially if you're using some kind of acid, but acid will also discolor the meat. So you want to limit how much time you're really marinating, stuff. It depends on presentation. So if you're
marinate for a couple of hours or overnight, no?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I do it in a bowl. Like I do short ribs at home. I buy it. Actually, I took some off the supermarket shelf today. So these are short ribs. And you can see the ribs here, right?
Isn't that flunkin'? Don't we just,
it is flunkin'.
We throw that in soup?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you can use it as flunkin' and put it in soup, like Grandma used to make, right? Or you can take this, marinate it, put it on the grill, and it's absolutely delicious. Slow cook it on the grill, and that's a really good piece of meat for reasonably priced meat. This is $6.99 a pound. I brought a rib steak, so this is what I wanted to show you before. So marbling is actually this white stuff that's inside the meat. So this is a choice steak, and choice is, one grade below prime. But prime would have a lot more marbling in it. Here in the supermarket, we can't sell this meat at prime. It just won't sell. But this is also really good steak. So
the fat is the flavor. Fat equals flavor. Marbling equals flavor. And
this is like my favorite steak. If I'm going to eat a steak on a grill, I'd love it to be a rib steak. It has a great bone on it, wherever that is. It's all backwards here. So, but it's just a great grilling steak, and you get to eat all the meat off the bone. And when you're at home, it doesn't really matter.
It's the handle. It's the handle.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. See, I knew I was gonna start salivating halfway through. So, okay. So what were the other questions? What kind of vegetables go well with a nice steak?
Well, if you're grilling, you can grill really, at the same time as you're cooking your steaks. Again, back to the whole thing. I'm not using pots or pans. I'm not using anything. So I just grabbed a couple. So I have some long hot peppers. I brought some asparagus.
Okay.
Some fresh asparagus. So what we do with the asparagus is you cut the bottom off of the asparagus, and then you just put it in a bowl. Hit it with a little olive oil, a little salt on top of it, and the same with the peppers or onion. I love thick sliced onion grilled on the grill, and you just slice it real thick. You let the oil sit on for a minute, some salt, put it on the grill. That's something you want to start really before you put your steak on, because it will take longer for you to caramelize your onion. But at the same time, you know, I'm cooking my steak and I'm cooking my vegetables.
Yeah.
Corn on the cob right now is really delicious. The corn is excellent this time of year. Take some corn, wrap it up in a piece of tin foil, throw it up on your grill. Don't chuck it. You know, shuck it after. But
Oh,
wrap
don't
it up.
chuck it. So leave it in the thing with all
It'll
the
cook
strings and
better.
everything in there.
It'll stay less. It'll be less dry if you cook it in the shell, in the husk itself.
How long would that cook on a barbecue?
You only need like 15 minutes.
Do you add any moisture into it? Like
Nope.
any water
No,
inside?
because you'll butter it up when it comes out, typically, and a little salt on it. Or you do Mexican style, where you squeeze lime, mayonnaise, roll it in cheese, squeeze some lime on it, which is really easy to do at home, which is really good. Give you a little flair to your veggie.
That's delicious. So it's good, like to balance your meat with your vegetables, and you get like a nice wholesome meal, and delicious.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you know, of course, you know, trying to lay a little bit low on the carbs, and it's a good way to do it, you know. And the grill, just a great way to stay away from the pasta pot, you know.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about potatoes, go easy on the potatoes, because my favorite meal is like a nice steak with mashed potatoes and that cream spinach, and you like kind of like smush it all together onto that one forkful, and that to me is delicious.
Yeah, or a loaded baked potato, you know.
Oh my God.
Right, bacon and cheese and scallions and sour cream and butter, and right. And then
Yeah.
a trip to the cardiologist when you're done.
That's right. But that is a good meal. If you're gonna go, that's the way to go. If that's your last meal, that's definitely the way to go. And that asparagus is so funny. I have to like look up what makes your pea smell from asparagus, because you could have
It's genetic. It's genetic. Some people doesn't happen to them.
I don't know one person that it doesn't happen to, but you can.
I know. I've met some people that doesn't happen to.
Really?
Yeah.
You're missing out. Like that's part of the fun. Even like if you had a dish that you didn't even know had asparagus, 2 seconds later you're in the bathroom, you're like, ooh, that has
yeah, right. It is literally a second later too.
Oh my God. That is crazy. But yeah, so I am definitely hungry. I'm going to have to go eat a meal right now because of this conversation. But yeah, so I encourage everyone to go to your grocery store with a little bit more knowledge and buy yourself a good steak and cook it the way that Randy described.
Totally. Some seasoned salt on the grill. Nice hot grill. Awesome.
Delicious. Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you. Will you be a reoccurring guest? Could we have you on like produce?
I got nothing to do.
Randy is a serial entrepreneur with everything to do. He runs like 8 businesses all at the same time. So thank you for taking the time out to talk to us about your chef.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We'll have you on again.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Rand.